Welcome to Moments, the podcast, where we have conversations that matter. Hi, everyone. My name is Vasia Makris, your host and founder of Moments, a creative agency bridging art, culture, and technology. Joined by my amazing co-host, HardArt, each week we host a live X space deep diving into hot topics that are shaping the Web3 ecosystem.
GM, what's going on, everybody? Excited for episode 6 of podcast, of Moments, the podcast. Milton, thanks for DJing us in. How are you, GM?
GM, glad to be back. Got another exciting conversation today. Ready to get it started.
Same. And actually, as we do, I'm going to run through a few things, a couple housekeeping items, but I also want to ask the audience to show some love. I see people already joining, dropping emojis. Super appreciated. If you guys can tweet out the space, would love to get more people in, honestly, because I want to hear from the audience today. I think there's a lot of interesting topics and questions I have, and I want to get as many different opinions as possible. And I love that Violet and Patrick already joined us on stage. Chris, I see you down there, so I'm going to egg you on to hopefully join at some point. I know you're pumping it at the gym, but thank you guys for just listening in. And as we kind of wait for the room to fill up, I do want to bring some attention to the pinned tweet up top. I actually just put it out a few minutes ago. Very excited to officially have gotten this out of the way. Moments, the podcast, I felt like needed to be made legit and official. We are officially on all major streaming platforms. So one of the things that I wanted to really emphasize and do is, we're having such great conversations. I feel like a lot of them timeless conversations in the sense that, it's not just current trending about this week, but they're conversations that can be listened back to and used down the line as well, which is really important for me. And instead of it getting lost, these conversations getting lost in this, Twitterverse, I wanted to make it a point where they're all getting archived. They're all being put somewhere where people can go back, listen to at any time, and kind of use as reference as well. So we're officially on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, all the major streaming platforms. So it's pinned up top. Guys, would really appreciate showing some love and hopefully spreading the word. But I do love the fact that many of you are repeat offenders. You keep coming back every Wednesday to join Milton and I on stage. I love hearing from a lot of you. And I do want to encourage everyone to feel comfortable to be joining the stage and sharing their thoughts whenever they have something, they want to get out there. I want this to be a very open conversation and dialogue. And speaking of which, here he is, Mr. Trevor Jones, back again. Very excited to be hearing from everybody today. I think there's some interesting takes. So I guess that will lead us right into today's conversation. So again, these are weekly conversations every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Milton and I kick it off. We have been going through a bunch of different tweets that we think are interesting, but have also gotten a lot of attention from the community. So the tweet that we're selecting today for today's conversation has gotten over 41,000 views. It was posted by Carlo, who unfortunately was not able to join us last minute. He can't join us on stage, but I'm very interested to hear from the guests and seeing what everyone's opinions on this topic is. I'll just jump right into it. Carlos, it's a very long thread, so I'm just going to try my best to summarize it. But this was a conversation that came up last week while we were talking about marketplaces. Just to quickly summarize what he said, but he starts off by writing, the art world, especially within the context of Web3, is facing a deep crisis that we can no longer ignore. There is an extreme rush to build a healthy digital art market without considering the solid foundations needed to ensure long-term sustainability. He then continues by stating, the traditional art market took centuries to find a balance and develop standards for both quality and pricing. Web3, however, has moved too quickly and lacks the key foundations. So he goes on and breaks down on various points. I'm just going to list them quickly below, but he mentions the lack of clear parameters for how we value artwork, the illusion of instant success in Web3, the misunderstood roles of marketplaces, and he mentions the democratization of Web3. Is it an opportunity or a problem? So he concludes by stating, if we want to build a healthy and sustainable Web3 art market, we need to slow down, stop to reflect, and learn from history. I definitely agree that we need focus and structure. We also need to think about the long-term vision, and this has come up in some previous conversations as well. But more importantly, Carlos wraps it up by stating a return to the real values of art, far from passing trends and media hype, which definitely resonated a lot with me. So Carlos is not here to kind of give us his perspective and take, but Milton, I would love to hear some of yours, just kind of briefly. It was, after reading this thread, what were your initial thoughts?
No, I think it's a great conversation to have. I think this space moved really, really fast in 21. We had a big bull market. We've talked about being in a hangover period. So the pendulum has swung in both directions, probably too high and probably too low, to be honest, right now, as far as value is concerned, from what I see. But I would agree that there are probably some lessons to be learned from the trad art world that a lot of times we shun in digital art and Web3 because we think that we're a new paradigm. And while we are, I don't think we're completely different from the trad art world. There's a lot of parallels. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to take a look at this. And I believe that the potential to build some of the provenance, ownership, exhibition history in particular is something where we can actually outshine just because the speed of light that we can transfer art around the world. I think exhibits like Art Crush, for example, I just participated in. I sent artwork for 9 artists, and Art Crush put them up in Belgium, and that happened within a week. There was no shipping, there was no insurance. That's a huge advantage that we have for building a layer of provenance on top of the artwork that we have. So I do think that there's a lot of potential. Perhaps some of it's even untapped. I think there's some tech layers like Trace that Transient Labs is using that a few select artists have played with, but I think more should. I think that's also a great way to build provenance and exhibition history and recorded agents, bringing validated third parties into the mix. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential. It's being unused to a large degree right now, but I think there's runway there, and there are lessons to be learned from trad art for sure.
Yeah, I think with all things, we're kind of experiencing the growing pains and kind of figuring it out as we go. I definitely appreciate people like Carlo who put out these interesting threads because it just provokes the need for these conversations. And so hopefully today we can kind of get some different takes and opinions. You did give us a couple of different examples, but I just want to jump into his first point and would love to pass the mic around to people on stage as well. The first thing that Carlo mentioned was how do we even evaluate artwork? And he mentioned the traditional market. People look at an artist's career, their body of works. You mentioned also exhibitions in galleries, museums, and they kind of gain certain recognition over time that justifies certain price points and value. In Web3, Carlo mentioned that there's a lot of artists without a solid quote unquote background. They haven't done exhibitions, they don't have that history of success, but they're still selling at these crazy price points. So I think the first conversation or point of the conversation we should bring up and ask our guest is, how should we be evaluating this artwork? What are some clear metrics and parameters we should be using? I don't know if there's someone specifically that wants to start. Maybe Violet Jones. Please, ladies first. How are you, Violet? GM? Thank you for joining.
Hi, it's actually good evening here because it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening again. Well, there is one way of kind of like normally in the traditional art world, you would probably, if you're a starting artist, you discuss that with the curator, with the gallery. You definitely start at the lower point and bring up your prices over time if you're selling. But in Web3, a lot of people, as you mentioned, did not have that opportunity, so they don't know how to value it. And basically, I do not necessarily agree that counting like hourly rate, because like you pay for the experience and skill of the artist. The more you create, the faster you become at certain things. And so this is like totally irrelevant. Like this is non-applicable at certain point, but maybe letting the market decide. So basically, if you're start the auction from zero and see how much somebody is willing to pay. Sometimes you might be lucky and somebody pays a lot, but next time you start from zero again and let the market decide. Like that some of like there might be better solutions for that, but I would actually feel that this is the fairest of them all for somebody who starts. And after a year, if you're still selling at those prices, you could start with the reserve prices or something like that. I don't know. Trevor probably could weigh in on here because he's very opinionated. By the way, I'm making meatballs, Trevor, so come back home.
I'm opinionated. Really? That's crazy. I am not opinionated at all. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah?
Yes,
All right,
GM Trevor,
GM,
welcome to the stage. Go ahead, please share your opinions.
My opinion is that Violet is actually much more opinionated than I am. I'm Canadian and diplomatic by nature. So, but yeah, after 10 years with Violet, I do tend to have a bit more of a hard-edged opinion on some things. It comes out once in a while. But yeah, I mean, gosh, it is an absolutely huge conversation to have. It's Oh, can you hear me okay? I'm hearing something in the background.
I do hear you, Patrick. I don't know if you can maybe mute your mic. I'm sorry. I think we hear an echo.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Sorry.
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead, Trevor.
I thought that
No,
was
no, you're good. Go
my
ahead.
headphones. Yeah, it's it's exceptionally complex. There's an infinite number of factors and variables involved. There's not one right way. The trad art world is just as guilty and corrupt as this space is. I think 2021 really fucked up this space in a lot of ways. It gave every artist, including myself, I think this over the top heightened awareness of self-worth just because we were early and that kind of thing. I think it did completely skew the way that I think artists, whether they're just starting out or have been around for 20 or 30 years or more, kind of viewed what this space was and what the future was of it. And so it did need to find some kind of equilibrium. And I think that is coming around. Unfortunately, 95% of the collectors left with the crash. So it is taking time to find. But I agree with Violet as well that it's the market deciding is, I think, a good way to start. Of course, there are other different artists have different expectations and goals, and agendas and needs, and they work with other people or collectors in the space. So just throwing everything out at the market willy-nilly, it could be dangerous depending on what your kind of where your reputation is and kind of I mean, same thing as working with Christie's or Sotheby's. That you know whoever Damien Hirst or is not going to just throw out things on the market and let the market decide. There's going to be some, and there is obviously market manipulation in that as well. Because I mean, here's an example. I've worked in Scotland here for many years with a woman called Barbara Ray. She's one of Scotland's top artists. She's a painter, traditional painter and printmaker. She's not in the space. She's even older than I am, so that's hard to believe, I know. But when her artwork comes up for sale on auction, her husband actually is always scouring the internet to see, if something of hers is coming up for sale, and if it doesn't hit the target, the reserve price, they'll actually buy it. So they will always be working on keeping her value up. So I mean, and that's just one, and I mean that's completely fair and legal as well. But there's a lot of things that happen in the trad art world as well in this space that are absolutely corrupt and wash trading and market manipulation. And I think I'm going off topic here, but that's just other things that I think that they will always be there. It will. That's not going to disappear. There's going to always be the underbelly of the art world. And I spoke about that in one of my tweets recently as well, one of my threads, that there is that kind of thing. So how do you find? I think you have to find your own way in the space, and if you get caught in doing dodgy dealings, people do find out. Will it affect your long-term career? In this space, who knows? People have short memories too. So anyway, I don't know if I answered the question, but I just threw out a whole bunch more shit for you to discuss.
Well,
so good luck.
Yeah, no, you actually jumped a little bit ahead. So one of my points that I was going to mention later is that, especially in 2021, that instant success and like you said, like that did its damage, and it's very unrealistic that that's, that shouldn't be the expectation. It shouldn't be the standard. But both you and Violet mentioned a good point. I mean, Violet, I really appreciate what you mentioned with having the community decide. And that was definitely a strategy. Like back when I was doing drops with King of Midtown and Crypt Gallery, like one of the things that we were extremely mindful of, outside of constantly monitoring the market and like up to literally the day before deciding what mechanics would look like, it was also important for us to not really set reserves and let the market kind of dictate, but also doing that at an earlier point in maybe your career, where once you start kind of being consistent and having a certain floor price, etc., like you do want to protect your other collectors. You do want to make sure that you're being mindful of what you've already released and what you're doing now. So it is that fine line and balance. Of course, never advocating for doing anything sketchy, but it is, like you said, like important to monitor. I'm going to pin up a tweet that Carlos had also released regarding he kind of compared the traditional with the digital world and what benchmarks he thinks we should be using in terms of evaluating and placing value on artwork. So just to kind of give an example, he mentioned like provenance and authenticity. So an example, in a traditional art sense, if artwork is in a museum or a gallery, the price kind of would go up. It adds value to the artist and to collectors. And honestly, this was something that we were trying to do back with the Crypt Gallery in terms of being able to exhibit. And for anyone that's not familiar, just to reference the Crypt Gallery, we opened the world's first NFT gallery in hospitality. So we had a location in LA, we have a location here in New York, and we were exhibiting artwork, and our conversations with artists were really like, you want to be able to say that you were not only in these cities, but you want to start building your portfolio for reference, getting articles published, being able to use the social media content down the line, and the more of that kind of organic exposure, it would benefit everybody. So in our head, it was like adapting to the traditional art world, where again, if you're exhibited in more places, you're hypothetically adding value to the artist, to the artwork, and all that. So Carlo also had mentioned the importance of the metadata, noting all these different key milestones. So if an artist has exhibitions or collaborations or any kind of critical recognition, it should be mentioned in the metadata to add value to the artwork, to the artist. So I thought that was super interesting. I was kind of looking for things like that. Like, I don't know if anyone else from the stage wants to, Maddie, I'm going to let you speak as well, but I just wanted to pretty much see if there was anything else people thought could contribute to, again, how we evaluate. Like, what's the criteria, the rubric, the checklist? What do we think would be good points of evaluation? Maddie, I know you just requested to also join the stage and speak. I want to give you a second. GM, thank you for joining the conversation.
GM.
I don't know if you, hi, thanks for joining.
How's my mic? Are we good?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. You're good.
I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm bullish on the art space, and I love to see these art spaces. They're coming back. I've noticed new art spaces coming back over the last 3 to 4 months, and that's a sign to me that the market's going to return back to what it was in 2021.
Awesome. Thank you. I know you I think randomly came across our space last week, so I appreciate you returning and joining. Feel free to contribute to the conversations if you had any takes on this topic. But if not, I do see Chris that also joined. So I want to say GM to Chris as well. Feel free to either of you guys jump in.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Milton. I see your hand. Or Chris, I don't know.
I just woke up. No, I'm kidding. Shit is happening. Sorry.
Do you want to speak, Chris? Do you not want to speak? I'm confused.
Well, I just came up to be the devil's fucking advocate.
Yes. Do you want to go
first? That's my job,
first?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Art in the Web3 space is valued by who Cosimo Medici think is good. And that's it. Everything else can fuck off, because that's what matters.
Did you make the cut?
That's so bullshit. That's bullshit, Chris. Come on. Jesus Christ. If you're going to be devil's advocate, at least say something that is somewhat factual. There is a tiny bit, there's a bit of truth in that, but there's a bit of truth, but it's completely off the mark, completely. Come on. I
do know a certain collector who sold a certain piece of a certain artist after Cosimo Medici bought a certain artist's work for a lot of money. And this collector, which I'm really, really happy for, sold that piece for a lot of money. So that's great. But no, that's obviously a joke. I think what we can learn from, just to iterate on your question here, I think what we can learn from the traditional market is that it takes fucking time to sell art, doesn't it? And it's not something that happens like it did in the 2021 bull run, or whatever we're calling this fucking hysteria that was going on there. It's also something I've been saying for quite a while, that like it takes fucking long to sell art. And another little point is that the thing about scarcity is actually kind of real. So maybe not go and do like the infinite drops. What were they called? The free mints and all that.
Oh,
Yeah, because like we were yelling about like how scarcity was a good thing, and scarcity actually is quite a good thing in the art space. And then like got to half a year later and everybody's fucking right-click saving and paying for it. And people are doing like 60,000 free mints and shit on Nifty Gateway and all that. Anyways, yeah, I've been ranting for a long time. I mainly just came up to fuck around.
well, thank you for joining us. I guess you're saying scarcity is one thing to consider in terms of how do we evaluate art. Like it's important to take into consideration the saturation of the market. Matt,
Yeah,
is that?
it's quick. Sorry, I'm
No, no,
just
go ahead.
gonna add to that. Well, it's pretty basic, isn't it? Like if there's an unlimited amount of your art out there, then maybe it's not worth as much as the one-on-ones. Obviously, you can do a free min, fuck around and have fun, but like don't keep doing it. And like yeah, there's like a list of things from the trad art world that Carlo mentions, but yeah, I'll let Maddie speak.
Yeah, I do agree, but I do think that there's, instances where the open editions make sense. It comes, I mean, Trevor's on stage. I reference him all the time regarding what he's done with the open editions and even free mints with the Oath and stuff like that. But uh, Maddie did have his hand up, Trevor, and then I'm going to swing it right back to you. Maddie, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off before when I invited Chris on stage, but go ahead.
I look at these free mints and these unlimited editions. Some of them can be okay, but if they're coming from like in the past, I've just noticed that artists that are putting out, unknown artists are putting out, let's say, unlimited edition mints or whatever that is. And it just seems to me, well, why would it have value if there's so many of them? I agree with the scarcity thing can be good. Like the big names, they'll put out a unlimited free mint or something, and that might do okay, and you might get a little bit of trade out of that. But I think you have to pick your artist for that. I came to the art space not just because I liked art, it's because I was actually looking for investment to something to do with my crypto. I was looking at the space and I'd seen, I think it was a Justin Arasano photograph sell for 30,000 US, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is hot. This could be the next thing. And I was neck deep in NFTs, and I still owned freaking apes and some other things, and I I you I do. So I watched the art space for a long time, and we had all that. At the time, it was WAGMI was a big thing, and it's kind of, I never agreed with it. WAGMI, we're all going to make it. No, and that was never the case but what I did see with the art space is you can make it. You have a chance, and I don't normally get on stage to speak to the to the hosts. I like you guys. You guys are great. But the people down below, I'm looking at in my screen, my phone screen. I'm looking at all the people down below and all their PFPs and all their happy faces. And what I can tell them is that the number of photographs and pieces of art I bought at least half of them because I could hear what they were saying on the stage, and I could hear what the artist was telling me about their life story or whatever they wanted to talk about, or what they ate for breakfast. And that was the way I was watching other collectors collect as well, and who will do again. because they're still in the game. They've still got skin in the game. They've still got crypto. And when their bags go up, they're going to look to say, oh, I might just have a little bit more of a dabble because it's very addictive, buying art. These guys are never going to leave. And so my message would be to the people hanging out below, too scared to get on stage because public speaking is the scariest thing in the world for most people. And I would suggest to you folk that if you've got art to sell and you want to get in the game, you're going to have to make that hard choice and get on stage and just say, hi, my name's Bob and I like cats and, I just want to hang out. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to try and sell yourself. Just
Fucking
come and be
cats.
a face at the top, exactly, at the top of the page. You need to get to the top of the page and have yourself visible. So for example, I just clicked on this guy, this guy's
No creative.
No Creative Bloom.
I just call him. I call him no. That's just
No Creative Bloom. That's one of the best banners I've seen in a while. I bought art because I've seen the banner and I've said, holy shit, that guy's got some skill. And so, it's banners like
debatable.
That
Debatable.
Send collectors down the rabbit hole. We're coming up.
You ain't got none.
Of course, devil's advocate would say that. Yeah, it's going to be, it's money season, folks, it's very exciting times.
I think that's a great point, Maddie, in terms of just community engagement and being able to really get to know the artist. I think that's definitely something to take into consideration. Again, when quote unquote evaluating work and putting value, I think the artists that are the most involved, that, you do dedicate time, but you get to know people on a human level. And that's something the traditional art world never offered. So I definitely think it adds value and it helps absolutely in being able to not just sell your art, but, develop those relationships. And I'm with you on that. No Creative, he does have a very sexy banner. I'm not going to lie. I do love his work. Trevor, I think you had a hand up, so I'll let you go first, and then we'll do Violet and Manit after.
I like No Creative Chris when he's showing off his sexy body, working out, and holding like a bottle or something or dildo, whatever it is he has in his hand. That's always a good one. I love you, Chris. As for
Trevor,
Maddie,
these are recorded. Sorry, go ahead.
Just for the record, I see no problems here, and I think we should keep going.
Perfect. On the topic of public speaking, I agree with Maddie. Just you have to do it. Just quick story. When I graduated from art college, I was 38 years old, and I got a job working for an arts charity, and I was running this small arts charity, and I had to speak. I had to go to these meetings. I had to go to talk to the board of directors. I had to go to events. And I honestly thought the first couple ones I did, I thought I was going to die. I literally was having a heart attack. It was horrific. The feeling, this intense emotional feeling of fear. Like it was, I can't even describe it. That's how bad it was. But I had to do it to keep my job. And, I was an artist, so having a job was a good thing. So I learned, and I kept on, and I'm not good at it. I still actually just take some kind of email recently just to help me with my public speaking things, stupid things I don't do. I know I should do, but I don't. But at least I can get up and speak. So I agree with Maddie. It's like just do it. Just do it. The best thing about these spaces here, it's like you're not actually on stage in front of 20 people or 100 people, which is terrifying. So at least you have like a fucking Bored Ape or something to hide behind, so whatever you've got. But you learn as you go, and these spaces tend to be very, very supportive. I still, after every one of these spaces I do, I still will go home and like, man, what I said something stupid, talk about No Creative and his dildo or something like that. That's just gonna have me thinking like, oh my God, second guess myself. I shouldn't have said that, but I did it. And it's like, you get over it. Also, people in the space, again, have very short memories. So you do something, you say something really silly, people will forget it, because I guarantee you that in about 3 seconds, somebody else is going to say something really even worse. So don't worry about it. Just get up and talk. Lastly, on the open editions, same, I agree, Vasia, and I also agree that open editions can be a terrible, terrible thing, a detriment to your future There needs to be a reason that you're doing an open edition. I know Rob Ness did the right-click save, I think was the X-copy right-click save. It's like an ongoing, forever, infinite open edition. And it's, I think it's hilarious. He's probably made about, I don't know, 20, 30,000 off that alone, which is, yeah, I mean, there's a reason for that. With my oath, and also, I mean, the Bitcoin Angel was an open edition. That was an accidental, I had no idea that was the beginning of the top, and it was like, it's something that just blew me away, and Violet as well. Like, so, I mean, again, throughout the last 5 or 6, 7 years in this space, it's a place for experimenting, but you have to learn from your mistakes and for other people's mistakes. So don't just say, oh, Bitcoin's on a run, or ETH is on a run right now, I'm gonna put out an open edition and try to make some money, because that will most likely have detrimental impact on your future sales. So always be aware of what you're doing, be very kind of conservative with your mints, and work on the other things to try to sell the ones that haven't sold yet, rather than just keep on producing more work and putting out there. I know there was that big debates over the last, since 2019 around that, but I think that the jury is in, and scarcity is an important thing.
Yeah, I completely agree, Trevor. And thank you for sharing. And honestly, with the public speaking, I'm with you. You should see me before these spaces, how nervous I get every time Milton and I jump on. So yeah, it just never goes away. Okay, I think Violet was next. We'll hand her the mic and then we'll just make our way around the room, guys. Thank you for the patience. Go ahead, V.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, in terms of the point that Matti, that public speaking and getting on spaces and getting engaged in communities is very important. Going to in real life events, definitely face to face, kind of relationship, kind of bond, and contributes to later on if you're good, because the work still needs to be quality. But to open editions or large editions, maybe for starting artists, is better to do a free drop just to get your name out there, something that might land in people's wallets people like freebies. So it could be like a kind of marketing thing. And then after a while, you might start selling to those people because they already know you. Also, from the collector's point of view, if you buy something, never buy because it might appreciate in value. Always first look at the art, and if you like it, then invest in it. Because we never know what's going to happen to the artist and what's going to happen to the artwork. But for example, when I started, okay, I'm going to sound so old, but but when I started in NFTs, ETH was like really, really low. Like literally my first artwork sold for $160 and I think it was like 2.5 ETH or something. So basically the first artworks that sold put me through Atelier of Fine Arts. I could better myself because I was making a little bit. I wasn't greedy. I was happy. I got $100, $150 for an artwork. And I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. Trevor, I just sold an artwork. Like, we're going to be super rich. And then I put myself through the private school of fine arts drawing and painting, and got myself around the world through residencies, but it was all from the profit I was getting from NFTs. And then when I got to a certain point, I started putting the reserve price that was a little bit more after I did certain shows and so on and so on. So the editions are not a bad idea, but maybe don't price them or price them super low just to encourage people to get them familiar with you and your work, because there are 1,000 fish in the sea, open sea. And to stand out, you have to do something marketing-wise slightly different, and also appearing in all the stuff that Trevor said when he was speaking. And by the way, we love Chris. We know him personally. So if anybody's listening, just remember, we love Chris, we know him, and we like to troll each other.
Thank you for clarifying on that last bit. Yeah, it's definitely a safe space. We're not attacking anybody. But Violet, you do mention a few good things. And I wanted to also actually mention the residency you kind of pointed out. I do kind of want to divert the conversation back to that original question as people are coming on stage to share. But in terms of like, how do we evaluate artwork? And I think so far I'm literally writing down the list because to me, with my teaching background, I'm literally coming up with a rubric of what we should quote unquote like be using as these metrics, just like Carlo in the original thread compared to the traditional art world. So far we talked about scarcity, community, and just an overall engagement, building those types of relationships. I think for sure residencies and any kind of program like that to develop your career and different milestones. Milton, because you are the co-host, I am going to swing you the mic and cut the line for everyone else that's waiting, and then we'll give it to Manik and then to Chris. So go ahead, Milton. What would you like to add?
Yeah, I'm glad that you redirected it back towards that original question because I think we're so much newer. I'm not sure every artist has had the opportunity to have the exhibitions or to have the Christie's experience. Certainly, that's not going to extend to every artist, right? The Sotheby's auction houses. So, yeah, I'm really curious to know what the mix is. As a collector, I was listening to a space recently with OG Crooked West and Mayamo Matt. They were talking about collecting, and they said there was a certain threshold of the quality of art that had to be hit. It couldn't be total shit. Like it couldn't be no creatives work, for example. But as long as it beat that bar, then I'm kidding with you, Chris. No, as long as it met a certain threshold, it was a lot more to them about the relationships. And so I think we've talked about this before, but it goes, it's worth saying again that there's a huge risk of disappearance from artists here in the space. And so I think the fact that you show up, and how do you, as a collector, how do you value that? Is it just being plugged in? So I'm curious to know kind of what the qualitative versus quantitative differences are in people's minds as far as valuing. Obviously, we can quantitatively value sales price and total volume and secondary volume, things of that nature, but qualitatively, like the relationships, showing up, IRL events, being on spaces, and kind of how do you measure that? Do you just have to constantly be present to witness that, or is there some way that we could kind of monitor that from somebody who's coming from the outside looking in for the first time, who would have no idea if they're coming in? Again, we talked about onboarding. That's a measuring stick that if you walked into the space, you wouldn't immediately know, even though that's very important to me, to a lot of collectors. So I'm curious, and Patrick hasn't had the mic yet, so I wanted to pass it to Patrick too. Patrick, I'm curious your take on that as well.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I think it's an interesting discussion we're having here. I guess just gonna flash back to kind of one of the beginnings. I know somebody made a joke about Cosmo, and I think they've been a great supporter of artists. I think it takes people to kind of go on a limb to buy digital art. And I think that us establishing over the last couple of years that pixels have value has been a tremendous boon for a lot of artists. I do think that it's we are really early in all of this, and a lot of people are coming to this without art backgrounds. A lot of people are coming to this with crypto. A lot of people are speculating on kind of what they think will be ultimately what matters from this, because we don't really know. I kind of made a tongue-in-cheek post the other day, like, ask me what good art is and I'll tell you in 20 years. Like, I don't think we really understand right now what art will be most culturally significant out of this period in the moment. It's really tough to see the forest through the trees. I do think what will matter most is the art that has the most impact on culture. What that is, we'll find out. But I do think that, like the traditional art world, art does need commentary. Art does need to be speaking something. Art does need to, like, looking back, still retain relevance and kind of have durable importance. So I think that artists that kind of shade that way with their work will probably be best off in the future. But what that ultimately is, I think that will be determined by, a lot of time, a lot of maturity. We're all very, very new and very excited about all of this. And I do think that we will trend a little bit more towards traditional sensibilities, in the future.
I'm with you, especially what you just mentioned regarding the long-term value. That absolutely resonates the most with me too. Okay, Manik, I'm not ignoring you. Milton and I are terrible hosts, but I do feel like Chris has a direct response to what he just said, because Chris was the one that made that comment. So, Chris, if you want to respond to Patrick, go ahead.
Which comment? What can you?
About Medici. Sorry.
Oh, it was a joke. It was a joke.
Ah, okay. I know. Go ahead.
I just picked out Medici of many influencers who pump their bags, right? and do it in a way that's probably not healthy for the whole space and the way people collect. But let's bring the others on. I still have things to say, but let's let the other people.
Okay.
I want to jump in real quick too. I think this conversation is really interesting because we're talking about valuing art, and it always goes to money and big sales like Cosimo Medici, even though that's a joke. There's some reality to it. A lot of people follow the trends. We had our own space about that, and those are monetary trends. I think it's also important to consider the, like Patrick said, the cultural impact of this movement and what we're contributing beyond monetary value. So things like giving back, like Trevor does with Maggie's, for example. Things like, F. Dot did leading a residency in Rio. I know RD is in the room. He's going to be a mentor, for example, for light artists. So I'd love to hear a little more conversation around things beyond the finances, because I myself, as a collector, get caught up, and we are a financialized instrument wrapping around the artwork in this crypto art world that we live in. So it's tough not to get caught in that conversation 100%. But I'd love to hear a few takes at least on cultural relevance, on giving back, on things beyond monetary value that we're talking about here. So a couple hands up. Manic has been waiting patiently. Manic, would love to hear your take.
Hey, what's going on? I don't know where to start. First of all, yeah, thanks for hosting the space. I really enjoy your guys' spaces. I've been coming back. What's up, Patrick? What's up, Trevor? What's up, everybody? And Trevor, thank you for collecting my edition that I have posted, my pin post. Yeah, I've been in this space going on 4 years, coming up very soon. It's been a crazy journey, and I fucking love it here. I found my tribe. That's why I keep coming back every day. I've basically had my foot on the gas pedal nonstop for these 4 years here, and that's where I'm having success. Getting out of my comfort zone. I started off on Clubhouse, and I remember listening in, and I was very afraid to talk and introduce myself, but just like I was in a room one day, and I was like, "Fuck this! Like I want to have success with this, so I have to get uncomfortable." And so I just introduced myself, and yeah, it was a really good thing. I made my first sale. It was my birthday. I ended up like sharing like my life story, and I had people crying in the room because I have a real fucked up story. But through that, I had a lot of growth and encouragement to like, to keep actually sharing my story with people. And through me sharing my story and being authentic, I've like helped a bunch of people, and it's actually helped me just being my true self. And yeah, so it's like important to like introduce yourself to people, and then because otherwise how's anybody gonna know you. So definitely that. And I love the culture here, and when it comes to like I collect whenever I can. I'm not rich or anything, so whenever I'm able to, I'll collect. I collected a piece off a friend of mine on Super Rare. It was like $600, but I actually had it. I made like the most money I ever made in my life. Like it was crazy. I had like a string of sales, and I don't know. It was like $13,000 I made in like a short period of time. I was like, this is crazy. I had my family freaking out because they saw how hard I've been working all these years, and like all the hard work like paying off now. So I do that when I'm able to. Let me see here. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so in the beginning too, like when I first got into space, like I didn't know how much to price my art for. So I kind of looked at it like I'm an artist. I'm like giving out mixtapes, letting people hear my music. So I gave out a lot of work for free, really cheap, and just over time, as I got collected by Cosimo, for example, a lot of big collectors, I was like, all right, let me raise up my price a little bit. The feature price has gone up. Let me raise up my price, and then boom, now I'm on Super Rare. I'm like, all right, I got encouraged, like you should raise up your prices, and so I did, and then like yeah, now I'm selling pieces for like $2,000 for one of one, and like I'm comfortable to raise my prices up, because I'm bullish on myself. I believe in myself, and I put a lot of time and effort into this thing, and so you know it's all about just experimenting, trying different things, but ultimately like believing in yourself. You got to be bullish on yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, then like how is anybody else going to believe in you? And so I think that's what I got for now. But yeah, definitely speaking in spaces. I've been in hundreds of spaces. And through being in spaces and sharing, with people, that's how I got on Super Rare. Actually, I was in a space, and the founder of this company called Monogramma, which a lot of people know, Patrick. Yeah, you're involved with Monogramma. Yeah, I was in a space. They heard me in there, and a few days later, I was on a video call, and we hit it off. And then I'm on Super Rare, and then had a piece up, got a bid the same night, and they were like, "Wow, it's amazing." And so, a few months after being on there in Monogramma, I was like, I want to be on there directly. So I started adding Super Rare every single day. You got to make noise. You got to make noise and just try different things. And then boom, like I got on Super Rare. Now I'm on there. It's just crazy. I'm just so grateful for this space. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing your story and your journey. And a lot of that resonates. I think the biggest, underlying theme that we continue to keep coming back to is the importance of that community, of the networking. And one thing that, the digital art space is, I think, in my opinion, extremely different regarding the traditional art world is like how authentic it feels, less like a commercial transaction and more like you really have access to the artist and building those relationships. And I think that's what Web3 never should lose in terms of the direction that we grow in. While you were speaking, a bunch of hands also went up. So I just want to go around the room, make sure we touch upon everyone. Trevor, let's go to you. And then I think it was Chris, and we'll make our way around.
Yeah, just a couple responses or replies to other people. First, Manica, always great to meet new artists and to pick up your work. And that was actually through Batsup Yum, who I love to pieces, and he posted that. So the space is great for that. Something unique about this space that you don't really get in the traditional art world is artists buying other artists' work. We have patrons, have like big collectors in the trad art world. But it's like a million artists fighting for a very, tiny piece of crumb of pie. Whereas in this space, it really blew up in 2018, even before I was in the NFT space. It was artists buying each other's work. And so that's a very cool thing about this space. Something Patrick had mentioned with the fact that we won't know what will be culturally relevant until 20, 30 years in the future, which I agree with. And that's another thing that the trad art world does, is that, the national museums, like National Museum of Edinburgh or National Museum of London, they will not pick up artists' work. They will not buy artists' work unless they've been dead for at least between 50 to 100 years. They have to be dead, because that's what the difference between a commercial art gallery, which is pure speculation. You're buying contemporary art. That was, and I did that long thread about that last week, 2 weeks ago, about curating culture. There's a big difference between artists or national galleries, collecting and curating culture through their exhibitions, and Christie's or commercial art gallery down on 10th Street selling a brand new artist for $50,000, just fresh off the street from wherever they came from, type thing. And that happens. There's just as many pump and dumps in the trad art world as there are in this space, believe it or not. It just takes a little bit longer for them to play out. And then going back to, I think it was Maddie, I can't remember, but talking about relationships. And that absolutely is number one, is building relationships in this space. And that's what you do in real life better than even these X spaces or DMs. If you can meet people on, at the IRL event, a lot of, it was HardArt talking about OG. And that's the thing. It's like when you meet collectors and you hopefully get along with them and they like you, they buy your art. And that's not just big collectors, but that's all collectors. And the vast majority of collectors in the space, even like Manic picking up his friend's work, is that it's you buy artists' work because you like, sometimes because you like the art, but other times because you like the artist. And if it's both of them, go hand in hand, then you've hit the jackpot. Chances are you won't make money on art, and that is just a fact. That's the fact in the trad art world and in this world. So you buy art, like Violet said, because you love it, and you support artists. I like to buy work from artists because I like to support them and give them the same chance that a few, 2 or 3 collectors of mine in the trad art world bought mine back 15, 20 years ago after graduating from art college, and was able to, or enabled me to continue my practice. So that is what this space has even more than the trad art world, is the fact that so many people are supporting so many people, and that's what I love about the space. So I think that keeps keeps the conversation going for a little bit longer.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate that take. I do find that that is probably unique to Web3 and artists buying other artists' work. I have seen quite a few artists who have publicly stated that they're taking 10% of their sales, sometimes up to 20%, and purchasing art. So it's always good to see them get a sale, and then they'll post it on the timeline as soon as they make their next acquisition. And I like what you talked about IRL too. And Trevor, I was curious what you charge for those meet and greets at the IRLs, how much you charge for those autographs, but
Those are free, but I charge you at least 15 of those shitty cherry liqueur drinks from Portugal.
fair. Okay, I'll be willing to pay that price. They're pretty cheap in Portugal, so that's not too bad. But yeah, the relationships is huge. It's something that I hadn't thought about when you talked about the museums as well. Patrick said we won't know till 20 years. Maybe we won't know till longer than that. And then when it comes to these big prestigious national galleries and museums, you're, famous only posthumously. So I find that the crypto art world moves faster than the trad art world, from what I can tell. So maybe those timeframes are slimmed down a bit, but that is interesting to think about. So that kind of goes back to that qualitative, quantitative, these IRL meetings, I think are huge. So I would encourage everybody to make as many IRL events as we possibly can. Hint, hint, Marfa, hint, hint, Art Basel, Miami coming up. So I will be at both of those. Looking forward to seeing you if you're there.
Oh, I got to
Come say
jump in
hello.
right now quickly. Sorry for this, but you didn't shout out Castle Party. And
I was
tomorrow
gonna say.
tickets
You're
go on
fired.
sale tomorrow. So it's usually you jumped in for me, but I'm only jumping in, and I freaking hate shilling. But tomorrow is drop day for tickets for the Castle Party. There's only 300. There's probably going to be actually less, because I just went to Portugal. I got back day for yesterday to meet up with the owners to see the space. It's freaking incredible. And they were a bit nervous about having 300. Maybe a little bit more, because of talking about entertainers, staff, DJs, some VIPs, that kind of thing. So, there's going to be a max supply of 300 tickets, probably less. So if you do definitely want to come, pick one up tomorrow. It goes live 3 p.m. Eastern time. That is 8 p.m. here in sunny Scotland, and 9 p.m. CET. So hopefully see you tomorrow at the drop, and pick up a ticket. Thanks for that shout out, HardArt.
They should be nervous if we're taking over their castle and coming in. But no, I'm glad you jumped in, Trevor, and mentioned that, because it's by far my favorite event, and that has nothing to do with the fact that we're helping out and working together, like, to help create and bring people in. Because honestly, like, everyone should be at these types of events, let alone Castle Party and the type of magic that you bring together. I mean, it's a 4-day all-inclusive type of event. I pinned it up top. Please make sure to check it out. Milton and I are also going to be hosting a space tomorrow at noon, talking a little bit more about it. But it's definitely not the event you want to miss. And specifically, my favorite part is the fact that it is so intimate, because you really get to build these connections. You really get to know people. And like everyone has been pretty much saying on this space today, that's what matters, these types of relationships. So Milton, I know both Trevor and I cut you off to shill Castle Party, but we'll hand the mic right back over to you. Go ahead.
No, always be shilling. So well done, Vasia, Trevor. Yeah, absolutely. Look out for those tickets coming to you soon. Those are going to go super, super fast. And I'm super stoked to be there myself. There's really affordable housing next door. Cryptui, our friend, just got a 12-bedroom house with a pool for like $300, something crazy. So look out for those coming soon. And the relationship building there is incredible. I think that's one of the most important aspects that we have in Web3 that we don't see as much of in the traditional art world. So maybe as we pass the mic, actually, that would be interesting conversation to have, is maybe one thing that we excel at better than the trad art world, and then perhaps something that you see lacking that we should probably borrow from the trad art world. Violet's got a good history and education in both of these worlds. So I'd love to hear Violet's take, and then we'll go to Chris and Pete.
Thank you. Thank you, Millie. So basically, one thing that I noticed that there is, apart from curation by places that put the artwork on the show, those who do not have that opportunity, I noticed that there is a little bit lack of self-curation. I noticed that a lot of artists, especially starting, they create something, boom, mint, and put it on sale. I think that we should spend a little bit longer to create a body of work and then pick absolutely best work according to us, like artists. So I noticed that one thing that we could learn from traditional art world. Artists normally create up to like 30, 40 paintings and then choose best 20. So I feel that we need to be the biggest critics of our own work and not just, mint everything, because it's forever. It's on blockchain. So you will look back at certain point and be like, I shouldn't have minted that. The other thing
Violet, do you mind if
also,
not to cut you off, but can I actually ask you a question about that? I think it's a super interesting point. But do you feel like it's because it's the nature of the industry? Like, we're digital, right? Like, think of society today outside of just Web3, right? You're posting on social media, you're posting an Instagram story, you're posting multiple tweets a day. Is it just like how society works and is programmed right now that it's just so easy to put it out there? I agree with you. It's blockchain, like it's out there, like it's gonna be following you
possibly,
forever.
and I don't say that sharing is not good. Share everything you create, but then like curate the best thing for sale. Because if you're not happy with a work and you just put it, oh, maybe somebody's going to buy it. Like, if I'm not happy with my artwork, I don't want anybody to buy. Why would I charge money for something I'm not happy with in the first place? So people, let's be realistic and let's be a little bit critical of ourselves. I'm not going to tell other artists what to do, but you know best
Honey,
your best work.
Honey, you are happy with everything you do. We are exact opposites. We're exact opposites in the, like, we go to the studio.
Shush, Trevor, it's my time. Shush, I've got important things to say.
She paints and she leaves happy. She's like, oh my God, I just had the best painting day ever. And every day is like that. And I leave.
But I don't mint everything. I'm just happy because I get to paint for a living. That's the best job in the world. However, the other thing is you could post the process. People like to see the process of creation. I know that some people are quite secretive about how they do. Oh, I don't want anybody to copy me. If somebody wants to copy you, they will work out the way you did it or do it the other way so it looks like your work. It's like,
or just
for
use
me,
AI.
it's a little bit. For me, it's a kind of non-point. But share your process, share the videos, share, like, if you don't like the videos, share the progress photographs, explain a little bit what you're doing, what you're using. I noticed that the collectors really like it and they bond with it. Like the work in progress, and they see the final, they kind of feel they had the relationship with this particular piece. Also, respect your collectors, no matter how big or how small. There are some people that can't afford big bids, but if you launch something at the smaller price and you get a nice relationship with them and you're respectful, they might support you and they won't support you. They will promote you. If they can't spend money, they will retweet you. They will like, they will, share your drop or something. Like, be respectful to all the collectors, because I noticed numerous times when we are at the peak, people like laughing at collectors for outbidding like $500. $500 is a lot of money for a lot of people. And like, I saw some people doing like really derogatory comments about it. And I'm like, who the hell are you to do that? It's like, I can see you've never worked for the money if you're laughing at somebody outbidding for only, like, in your eyes, only $500. So be very respectful to people who are purchasing your art, because they are purchasing a piece of you and you're giving everything in that. So it's very important to be respectful, showing your process and not minting everything. Be a little bit more selective. Sorry for being, angry, wagging finger person.
Those were all incredible points, Violet. And honestly, speaking from experience, absolutely. Sometimes support isn't monetary, doesn't necessarily translate to collecting, because not everyone is in that position. I don't have the largest collection that I would like, but at the same time, support comes in other ways. And absolutely, I think it's extremely important to take notice of that. And again, to always show respect, regardless of that level of support. HardArt. And you did mention the behind the scenes outside of what you mentioned in terms of building a relationship, and I encourage always artists to show any kind of behind the scenes that they're comfortable with. But also, honestly, take a minute to recognize the fact that majority of people that are not artists don't know the process. Like, I have no idea how laborious it is to create some of these things. And Violet, when I was visiting you guys in Scotland, I came to the studio and you had me paint an apple, and it was the most difficult thing I probably ever had to do. I had no idea that it was so difficult to create something three-dimensional on a piece of paper. And
Well, you did an amazing job. The apple was beautiful.
I had an amazing teacher, so thank you so much. But no, I definitely encourage. I think you gave a lot of good tips, and you brought up a lot of valid points. So thank you for sharing. Chris, I think you were next, so go ahead.
Hi, hello. This is me now. Um, First off, Vasia, supporting is a lot of things. So thank you what you're doing here. I really value this space. Well, both of you, HardArt, Milt, you should be forgotten. This is support. This is a way to support the community. This is a way to bring us all together and help us keep going, because it's fucking hard out there sometimes. And while I'm at it, Vasia, you being shy and nervous talking to people, I've seen you like bring down a whole fucking theater of crypto bros and just make them silent. So don't come at me with that. And to everyone else, the price of a meet and greet with Trevor Jones is the ticket for the cocktail party, which is worth it, but that's the price. So there you go. Milt, one thing we could do in the space to like, instead of like looking to HardArt and see what we can learn from them, because it's on paper. Like there's a report every year about the whole art market. Read it, you'll understand a lot about how the art market works. You can look to that. But one thing we really need to do in this space is kind of like try and figure out how we differentiate the different parts of the art space. Because right now, NFTs are just thrown into a big bucket of fucking PFPs and what I would consider fast food art, the gamified art, the one-on-one art, the experimental art, the gen art, the weird art, like the art that's programmed into the blockchain. Like we need to help people because I understand that you can't onboard anyone in here with the fucking chaos that's going on, and especially with what happened in 2021, where people spent millions of dollars on artists who probably weren't artists or like just fucked off. I'm a culprit. I've spent money on artists who's not here anymore. But that's also a risk you have to take when buying art, as Trevor said, from artists who are not dead, who hasn't proven their worth in death. So yeah, education, curation, helping people understand, like having somewhere to go instead of and let me bring it back to the influencers to see like, oh, this guy just like he's talking about this artist and oh my God, he must like, I don't understand any of this artworks. These artworks like 3D is probably hard. Like that Astro guy, he's probably really good. Like let's spend a lot of money on that. And then what happens? And the shit crashes, right? And I'm not like I minted a Astro too, because that's what we do too, and that's another point, and that's to all the artists. Like, don't run after the hypes and the trends. Like, do you guys remember when everybody was minting on Solana? Who's minting on Solana? No one. No one's minting on Solana now. Like, don't do that. Like, don't like if some guy comes in and is a bit horny and has a lot of money and starts buying nude art, don't start producing nude art. Don't do that. Wait and see, or make it your thing. Like when some guy starts buying pictures of frogs, don't make a piece. That's a frog. Like, don't do that. Don't wait and see when a new platform pops up or a new layer. Oh, and I'm a culprit. I've done this.
Well,
What?
Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. Finish up. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm just
No,
gonna
I
rant
think you're
now.
on point. Well, first of all, thank you for all the kind words. But I do think that, you're spot on with some of this. I mean, it's about being authentic and not really changing your art. Listen, it's one thing to like, okay, it's a cultural moment and you
That's
want to
the whole
create.
artist thing, and that's fine. But we need to figure out a way how, like, a place where new collectors can go to understand what is
Well,
going
let me
on
ask
here.
you a question, and I'm a huge, absolutely with the education. I completely agree. I mean, it's rough in these streets. Like, I'm talking to a lot of brands and a lot of people, and like the stigma is so difficult to break through. And we have done a lot of damage with the hype trains and these unrealistic expectations, and just,
It was Paris Hilton.
oh God.
She follows me. Best day of my
Wow.
life.
Wow.
Don't brag about it, buddy. Seriously.
I
Trevor's
love
jealous.
Paris.
Oh no, she follows me too. Don't worry, she follows me too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So
Okay.
does
So,
John Cena.
You're validated, or you made it.
well, I was going to bring up the next kind of point, and I know obviously we spoke last week about marketplaces, but I have a question in general. I mean, I know it's the whole anti-gatekeeping, this is Web3, but at the same time, like, don't we need these platforms or places or curators that are trusted where we can redirect people, like to kind of validate, like the people that have done the research to an extent for us? Because who has time to do all that? And I mean, I think of Super Rare as that type of platform, especially in the beginning, where it was, yes, it was gatekeeping and some people hated the concept, but I also appreciate it because they're, curating, and hopefully they're curating with the right criteria.
Can we talk about Super Rare's curation in 2021?
Tell me, Chris, what are your thoughts?
You Super Rare. You go on Instagram. You find a 3D artist with plus 100,000 followers. You onboard them to Super Rare. That was the fucking curation process.
You know what? I can't even speak against it. I don't know if someone, Trevor, I saw your hand shoot up, so please go ahead.
I see Maddie and Pete are also there, so I'll let them jump. But I'll reply to that if they're wanting to talk about that or something else. It's up to the choice.
Thank you for being a gentleman. I do feel bad because we've been neglecting the guests. Pete, you've been waiting super patiently. Thank you so much. Welcome to the stage, GM. What would you like to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I just, the whole concept, just to like bring it back to the original, like the title, comparing Web3 to the trad art world is kind of like, I think the most important thing to do, because like what you guys were saying, are there platforms that act like galleries and curators and things like that? And I was like, I don't know how long I've been doing this for. I think it's like 3 years ish. I don't know, but the time is getting weird. But so I, like, when I started, I was like, this could be awesome, because I got like the blockchain thing, and I was like, we could use this, like, like somebody prints photographs and has shows of photographs, but they're prints, like it's the picture you took and this is the way you display it. This is the way we distribute these, and then have shows of them. And it can be a different way of connecting the artist to the artwork and the art world at large. So that concept works. Like, and early on, I saw nobody actually curating and nobody acting as a gallery at all. Like, Super Rare was default doing that because they were very popular amongst collectors for whatever reason. And I mean, there's reasons. I'm sure people like you guys up here probably know, but I've in personally in paying attention to the artwork. Yeah, like you guys were saying, it's not, there's most of it isn't like justifying this, like the extreme thing that happened in 2021. And but that's, that's like, that's connected to the traditional art world too, because there's a whole world of like technological art and artists that got mega props for just being the first one to do the thing with the thing. Like there's people early on in the 80s that were just doing random shit with blue screens, and they're in, you know, art history books. And like shit like that is, you know, that's why it made sense probably to be buying stuff then, because there's a very good chance there's a very select group of people who are actually putting things out in this year on this platform. And but you know, back then for me, trying to make things as an artist, I was like looking at everything and I was like, yeah, but like where's the art? Like where are people talking about the art, and where are people talking about why the art is important, and what art is important, and what metrics are we putting out there to determine this, you know, etc. And so what I always go back to and have gone back to is just its connection to the traditional art world, and like where aesthetics are going, why they're going there. We're within the NFT thing, we have like I'm involved in the AI art world a little bit, and through fellowship. And to get back to, are there galleries and things like that, or entities were acting as galleries? Fellowship is doing a good job, I think. And they're not, I don't know of any, well, there's like other platforms that are kind of doing things with some of my friends, but like Fellowship, like Alejandro, I've talked to him so many times, and he's like, for real, you know, he gets it. And he's good. He's good at talking about these things, and he's good at talking to artists. He's good at talking to collectors, and he's like the person literally bridging Web3 and the traditional art world. He had conversations last year. He has mega traditional art world people, you know, minting through Fellowship right now. He's had conversations with people like Hans Ulrich Obrist in the last year about AI art. So, you know, I don't know of anybody else doing it on that level. If you don't know who Hans Ulrich Obrist is, look him up. It's a big deal that he had that conversation, and to have somebody in the NFTs and connected to a platform, you know, working that hard to branch out and show the traditional art world what's going on, it's a big deal. So I mean, like, I don't know, that kind of thing needs to expand. There shouldn't just be like Fellowship and like brain drops or something. But like that concept is where it's at, I think. That's
No, I'm
that's all
with
I have to say.
you. Thank you for shouting them out. I definitely Fellowship is, and what Alejandro is doing is major, and absolutely the direction we need to be going in regarding just, you know, constantly innovating. Actually, you mentioned the word innovative and people who are innovating. I think that's another thing that, to be honest, should be added to this rubric of, you know, what are we using to evaluate art? I think absolutely the people that are pushing the boundaries and being these innovators, that should, in my book at least, be added to the list of criteria as well. Milton, I know you had a hand up, so I'll swing you the mic real quick. And I do want to just say to the audience, I mean, if there's anything, we mentioned a couple different things like the scarcity, community engagement and involvement, exhibitions, having long-term or cultural value. But if there's anything else that we're missing, feel free to drop it in the comments. I want to definitely hear from more people and expand the conversation. But Milton, go ahead. What did you want to share?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to touch on what Pete said. I agree with you. We got the chance to meet Alejandro at the Zonamaco Art Fair in Mexico, and he had a great exhibit up, and he's very knowledgeable. And I think something that goes unseen a lot that he's doing on top of his expertise and being very articulate about why he's passionate about that side of art right now is secondary sales. You remember those secondary sales? Anybody? So he's stimulating secondary sales from some of the artists that work under his corral. And I think that's hugely important because without that, a lot of collectors lose interest. We are in crypto at the end of the day, and people do like liquidity because things move fast and people like to take advantage of new opportunities. So if you don't have a healthy secondary market, then you're missing out a lot there, and you could potentially lose a big collector base. So I'm with you. I think Alejandro is doing really good things. I'd actually love to have him on the show at some point. But yeah, I wanted to pass the mic to if there's any more hands up. Trevor's got his hands up. Trevor, I'd be curious to hear your take on one thing that Web3 is excelling at, and maybe one thing that we could potentially borrow from the trad art world that we're lacking. Trevor.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'll get to that in just a second. I was going to reply previously to, I think it was Chris in Creative was talking about kind of super rare and this inability to curate, or there was no curation really. It wasn't any kind of real curation involved. And again, well, I get that can actually lead on to what does the traditional art world do better is that you have these, and he also talked about the separating all these different types of things, whether it's PFPs or generative art or traditional artists coming into the space as painters, and or whatever it is. There a trad art gallery, a commercial art gallery, maybe the biggest ones would be a bit different, but in general, probably 95% of traditional art galleries will have their stable of maybe 30, 40 artists, because they, as the gallerists, have to build relationships with their artists to understand them, to get to know them, to sell their work, because they have to explain to their clients and their visitors to the gallery everything they can about this artist and who they are and what they're doing and why they're special, why they're unique. And if you have 200, 300, 1,000, 5,000 artists in your stable, that's not curation. That's just pure profiteering, and that's unfortunately what all the marketplaces did from the beginning to the crash, because all they were doing was just like, how can we make as much money as possible during this boom time? And now you see them going under because it wasn't curation, it was just pure greed, unfortunately. So I do think, and then people can say, well, that's gatekeeping, and this space isn't about gatekeeping. And I understand that crypto is about anti-establishment and anti-institution, anti-banking, and but the art world is not, that's pure chaos. And if you want to improve this space, you're going to have to align yourself or get to grips with the fact that there's going to have to be curation. It is what it is. Otherwise, you're going to have this OpenSea and it's the Spotify of the NFT space, and the only people who are going to be making money is the top 0.001% who've already made it, and the platform itself, and everybody else is just going to be lost in an open sea, literally. So to find the space, you have to have that artistic integrity and depth within the curatorial process of each, whether it's the various platforms that are popping up now, and I think I've probably hit a few things of what's working or what could work, and what we actually do better in the space than the trad art world.
Hey, thanks for that. And I wanted to give you a quick follow-up question too, because we were starting to transition talking about innovation. And I've been talking to some artists recently about this recent debate that we had, the great marketplace debate last week. And they said, yeah, sure, it's easy to point fingers at marketplaces when they make pivots or they go under. But in reality, if you don't look in the mirror too, there's a lot of artists there when you look around today that really aren't pushing. We kind of talked about what's okay in the NFT world. And sure, minting a picture of your painting is fine, and that's valid. It's a good way to potentially find a new market and distribute it, etc. But that's an NFT 101 to me. And I know, Trevor, you've been experimenting and tinkering since day one. So I think we might be at a little point of stagnation for some artists that just think that they can do what they did in the past without really pushing the tech. What's your take on that? And is that experimentation, technical ability, is that something that everybody needs to consider, or just a select few?
Can you hear me okay now? I just got froze there. Yeah, okay. I'll give you a good example. So my first year at art college, my drawing tutor, Scottish guy, he was a very big name in the 80s and early 90s as a painter. He was part of the New Glasgow Boys, a very kind of stylized, a figurative artwork. And I mean, he was a very big name at that time for probably about like 15 years, and he was selling for a huge amount of money, sell out exhibitions, and then taste changed. and he was teaching full time because he could hardly sell. I was actually, when I graduated, I was selling more work than he was at the same gallery. So, kind of the middle of the road galleries in Edinburgh. Because he was still creating the exact same stylized work from the 80s that nobody was interested in anymore after Damien Hirst and the YBAs came along, the Young British Artists and that kind of thing. So yes, you do have to innovate. The problem with this space is it moves so fast. It's very different from the trad art world, where you can maybe every 5 to 8 years you think about, okay, I need to start maybe shifting or pivoting to something that's a bit more relevant for the day we're at right now. This space moves so fast, so it's almost every 4 to 6 months you're thinking like, oh shit, something new has come out. So then my advice is to get yourself a David Oxley. I'm not sure if he's here listening right here, but he's been with me. I've been working with him since about 2010. I met him through the little arts charity I was working at. He was a web designer, content management system creator for the charity website, and we've worked together, collaborated on projects since then, which I was able to get into doing QR code paintings 15 years ago, and augmented reality before anybody even heard of it back in 2013. So find yourself somebody who you can collaborate with, who has skills in the tech. If you're a traditional artist, if you're a digital artist, you really need to be up in your game and constantly looking at what is happening. But you also have to think about, why is your work relevant? So you're creating, you're being innovative in the techniques that you're using, but what does that mean? And that's something that you can learn from the trad art world, is that the work that you're creating has to be representative of the space and the world that you live in today as an artist. And if you're creating things that could have been created, whether it's 50 years ago as a painter or 10 years ago as a digital artist, why is it deemed important? Why would somebody else look at that right now? You have to be on the cutting edge of ideas and tech in this space at all times, and it's hard work, and that's why these spaces are good, but you also have to reach out to other people and see what they're doing or work with them. Especially that no creative Chris guy. He's not only sexy, but he's very talented too.
Very hot and cold on these attacks toward Chris today. I like that we hype him up as well. Yes, he has gotten buff as hell, so he definitely deserves getting some comments. But no, you mentioned a lot of interesting points, Trevor. And I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like that's the world in general. If you're not being flexible and you're not making pivots, you're gonna get left behind, period. And so it's really important to have that kind of adaptable mind frame. And then in terms of what you also mentioned, like the context as well. I mean, why does Beeple get so much love? Like, the guy sits and creates a piece that's relevant for that day, for that moment, and is also just documenting it. So it's in my opinion, obviously going to be relevant down the line as well, because it's documenting important, current events as well. So yeah, it's definitely, especially in Web3, the never ending, constantly going, it's exhausting. It can definitely lead to burnout, which, the whole mental health aspect is a whole other conversation. But yeah, you definitely mentioned some great points. And Chris, I saw you jump in and throw hands up, and then I know Pete also threw hands up. So if you guys want to respond to what Trevor just said, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted real quick to echo what Trevor's saying, because we kind of moved into what the Web3 space is that the traditional art market isn't. And as artists here, we can do a lot of different things, a lot of other things, and there's a lot of other opportunities in this space. So than just selling art. I was just contacted by a platform that rents out art and asked if I would like to augment my work to a screen in a mall, and it will be on display for a month, and they will pay me. And I obviously said yes, because that's going to be fucking amazing. So this is like a paid exhibition, and there's just so many things, and small commercial gigs and all kinds of stuff that you can support yourself with here. And I feel that it's really important not only to look at the sales, but also to look at the different insane opportunities you get here. The amount of places I've been exhibited in the world now costs And only because, and you're like a culprit there, Vasia, like only because of Web3 and because everything is digital and you don't have to ship anything, you can just send them a file and boom, you're in fucking Shibuya in Tokyo. And the next thing you know, you're in LA. And the next thing you know, you're in New York, right? And that might not like give you money to eat, but like also you're an artist, you know it's gonna be hard, you know it's gonna be a struggle. Like don't expect to live of it, but see everything as a win in this space, everything you do and everything as an opportunity, because there's a lot of them and stuff happens fast. Stick to your style, stick to your heart, and but like look into what you can do here, because you can do a lot. And that's the last thing I'm going to say today.
Thank you, Chris. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, okay, I think the conversation is leading towards, okay, the traditional world and Web3. There's a hybrid model that we kind of need to focus on. And what you just mentioned about there's no barrier in terms of shipping your artwork in order to have it exhibited somewhere. I mean, that's massive. That takes away a lot of the obstacles faced in the traditional art world. And you're right, being able to exhibit your work in all these other places, yeah, you might not necessarily be getting paid, or perhaps not everyone is going to see it and then mint it. But just being able to say that your artwork was there, just being able to have content of your artwork being exhibited in these places. They've done a bunch of things at Times Square. I mean, Crypt, we had community curations and showcasing people in New York and LA, and just giving these opportunities. I think definitely there's a lot of value, and there's initiatives like Hug and Art Crush and all these other ones that are doing it to really support artists and help them build their portfolio and really add value to their art long term. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I definitely encourage. There's a lot of open calls that artists can look into that I think is a huge initiative that obviously the traditional art worlds can't have. So that's important to mention. Pete, thank you again for waiting patiently. Would love to hear from you again. Milton, can you hear him? Is it just me?
No, I can't hear Pete.
Okay.
Oh,
Pete's
sorry, I
hey.
didn't even.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I just there's so much to like this whole thing, like with talking about where like art is and where it has been and where it could be. And I hope that it keeps moving to the art and like the concepts that people are thinking about and how they're using them. I think you guys were talking about AI, like just the movement of the tools, like the speed of the tools that everybody's using being, detrimental sometimes. And I think that's like not new in any way. It's just a choice that an artist makes, and I think it's sometimes a very how do I say it, inexperienced kind of choice. Like it's what a teacher of mine said a long time ago, who I like was really good, and he's famous, and he was like obsessive about. He worked with technology, and he was in a band called Matmos, and he did Bjork's Vespertine album with her, and he was obsessed with like using like making the newest sounds and like making his own like type of sound. And he did, and if you listen to Bjork's Vespertine album, he's all over it. And his ideas about that were that you have to like obsess over something. You have to obsess over a tool so much that you build a language aesthetically with that tool. And I I I think especially with AI art, I think there's a chasing of a newness, and that chasing is at the detriment to artists expanding their vocabulary. And I think that what ends up happening is the tool dictates the aesthetic and not the artist to a large extent. And there's not a whole lot of personal um, personal vision in a lot of AI art as a result. But that it doesn't have to be that way. Like, the tools are there. You can use them any way you want. And I'm interested in seeing, like, when things start to, like, the artists that are starting to move it, into more of that mindset. Anyway.
No, thank you for sharing. And Trevor, I know you have a very strong opinion on this, so go ahead.
I use AI all the time. All of it. I use it every day now. I mean, and I've been using it with my own creative process as an artist since early 2021. So it's not. I've never been against AI. I think it's the most amazing tool. But I agree very much with a lot of what Pete said there about an artist needing to understand why they're using the tools that they're using, to obsess about them, and to use them to build their own personal and authentic visual language. 100%. I remember when I first started using AR back in 2012. There were no other artists using it that I knew of. Definitely not in the UK, and it for me it was just like I as a painter, as a traditional painter, I saw this as just the most amazing opportunity to add digital content, whether it was for new stories, to tell a story, to add, my process, to add information, to add music to a painting, information about a painting, and for me, it just opened up the floodgates of ideas. But then I remember in 2015, I was working with an AR company called Mataio. They're based in Germany, and they flew me out to Barcelona for the World Mobile Congress event, which is like one of the biggest digital kind of events in the world. There were something like 90, 100,000 people at this 2-day event, and got to meet the team. And I was talking to the CEO, who had been involved in the AR space in 2008. And so I was at 2015. I was 7 years after he'd already been in AR and with Mataio building up that company, which was actually, on a different story, was bought out by Apple literally about 4 months after that meeting that I had with them. But he was, I was like so excited. So I'd been working with AR for about 2.5 years or so, and I just like, oh my God, this is like the most amazing tool. And he said, like, look, Trev, I was saying that 7, 8 years ago, and you need for this tool to work for whatever you're using it for, from a creative perspective. It can't be a gimmick. It has to make sense. There has to be a reason that you're using this. And I took that to heart very deeply. And so it really made sense on how I kind of continued to develop my visual language with the message that I was trying to convey or wanting to convey to the viewer, and how I was using augmented reality. And I went from all different types of processes using AR, with video, with animation, and also going from and photography, from starting with the digital and going to a painting, with a first frame of a video, and that became the starting point for a painting, or starting with a painting and then using morphing technology to morph that into a video. So I mean, I went through enormous amounts of experimentation since 2013 with AR, and then 2018 rolls around. I'm in this crypto art space. People started to see my work and started to jump on the AR bandwagon because they're more tech friendly, tech natives, and so they started using AR in the space. But it became, again, it was just remind me back of my conversation with that guy from Mataio, that it became gimmicky. It was they're using AR to throw on some bells and whistles, and to not really add any extra depth or meaning to the story they're trying to, or the message they're trying to convey through their artwork. And the same thing with AI, as P was saying. I don't understand AI artists, who are trying to create oil paintings with their art, with their AI. I mean, you've got a new tool here. Don't try to create something that has already been, done for oil painting for 500-600 years. You've got something now. You have to use your imagination and to think outside the box to create something with a new tool that is new and relevant for the day in which we are working. So, I mean, again, I guess for me, it was having these conversations whatever, like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And that it makes sense because that's what I've been living for so long now. But this message has to get out to younger artists who are starting out in this space, and there's all these tools, all these digital tools that they can use and become amazing visual artists in a very short amount of time. But they have to ask the question: why are they using that tool, and what are they trying to say, and how do they work together?
Yeah, I think that you used a specific word, Trevor, that I think fits the whole theme of today's space is the word intentional. Like we need to be intentional with the tools that we use, with what you're creating, but also with, how we're evaluating things, where the whole conversation about how do we place value on work and the infrastructure that we create and put in place, and even being intentional with the things that we choose to adapt from the traditional world. It's not all bad. And I think we need a lot of that structure in order to help us grow and thrive down the line. So I'm totally with you on that word, and it really resonated. Go ahead, Trevor.
I'm just going to very quickly, just sorry to jump in, Pete, but I'm getting yelled at in DMs from Violet. Dinner is ready, and I need to leave the studio now and get back home. So, so it's been amazing talking to all of you guys. I love your weekly episodes here. Love you, No Creative, Chris. I enjoy trolling you, and please keep posting those sexy pics with whatever the heck you're holding in your hand. Pete, nice talking to you as well, and Manic and everybody else who is up here. But yeah, have a good night. I'm starving. Gonna jump out now for some meatballs and pasta.
Just to clarify, it's sexy gym pics with whatever he's holding in his hand, because I don't know, Trevor. That was a little too.
I just saw him post something like it was I think it was like I don't like dwell on his naked photos. It's he's topless or something like that, or he's flexing and he's holding something. At first I thought it was a dildo, but I think it's a water bottle. I didn't take too long of my day looking at it, but just want to say it it gives
I think it's a
Violet
shake weight from South Park.
Yeah, it looks like it. But anyway, it gives Violet and me some good quality laughter time, so appreciate it, Chris.
And on that happy note, run to your wife, Trevor. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate both you and Violet always supporting. Bye. Enjoy dinner. Definitely appreciate you guys always joining the conversation. And I actually do want to wrap up as we kind of head toward the 2-hour mark. So, Pete, I want to give you the mic one last time before we kind of head to the key takeaways and wrap the space up. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on the whole, like, just to kind of wrap it up what we were kind of getting at in a way. So traditionally in the art world, there's like, there's been this in the painting world specifically. There's been like the galleries and the museums, and the ways that artists have progressed in their careers, painters have progressed often, is they get, gallery attention. And then they have shows with these galleries, and their shows end up being amazing. This is like, there's a lot of artists that get gallery attention and their shows just don't hit. But then the ones that do, like, grow. And that's kind of that's kind of a inevitability, I think, as a way to put art out there. But like the biggest thing that I would go to is the ones that have been the most interesting artists have come from shows that were curated by these like gallery systems that were like sensational shows, like where there were like 4 or 5 artists in this show that were like on the top of their game and doing brand new stuff. And that kind of thing can only happen when the experimentation is the point. And I'll leave it there, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's very valid. And thank you for bringing it up. Actually, one of the tweets I was pinning up top earlier while Trevor was speaking was more about that gallery model. And Pablo had brought it up, I think, the other week, specifically saying that we should be kind of adapting a bit more of that in the Web3 space, and saying how galleries working directly with artists to shape their career and provide that type of infrastructure, exhibitions. And I think it also, like, to piggyback off of what you just mentioned, it allows artists to be a little bit more innovative and pushing the boundaries when they do have that gallery support. And it goes back to the whole leading a team. I think it definitely, I think, enhances their ability to experiment, to kind of push those boundaries. So thank you for ending us on that note. As we kind of wrap up, and can't believe we're heading toward the 2-hour mark, thank you guys again for all joining. I do want to just finish us off with some key takeaways. As always, just to summarize briefly, but also just from listening to everyone's conversations and comments today, I think it goes back to education and the importance of educating and learning from the traditional art world. And I think another important point that someone briefly had mentioned earlier was how many of us have a very different background, and it's not from the art industry, myself included. I mean, I used to be an elementary school teacher. I was in education, so I don't have the art background. And a lot of us here that are building, I really want it to be positioned where it's like it's a strength, and I think it definitely adds a unique lens that we all come from these diverse backgrounds. We all have different skill sets, but it's also important to take a minute, to take a step back, and to do some research. And that does mean read up and learn about the traditional art world. And I'm actually reading a good book someone recommended on the contemporary art market, and it talks all about Christie's and Sotheby's and all the different things that happen behind the scenes. And a lot of it I didn't know previously to reading this. So it's definitely helped me approach the Web3 space in a very different way as well. So again, just want to emphasize educating ourselves and being proactive in that aspect. And my last key kind of point to take away from is the fact that, there's nothing wrong with learning from the traditional art world, and in general. I mean, things have already been done, mistakes have already been made. So why not learn from other people's mistakes and use that to our advantage so we don't repeat them? And that way we're able to build in a better and stronger way. So those were just the kind of key points that I wanted to make. Milton, I don't know if you wanted to add on to anything, but outside of that, I just wanted to thank everyone again for tuning in, for listening. We're here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. I appreciate everyone who also joined the stage and contributed to the conversations. Everyone is always welcome to just request and hop on. We want to make this an open conversation where it's a discussion. Milton, do you want to close this out? Do you have any other key takeaways before we wrap it up?
Well, pretty simply, I think it's just interesting to compare and contrast some things that we obviously do differently. We have opportunities to do some unique things that aren't possible in the trad art world. So it's great to celebrate those. But I think sometimes we get lost in the sauce thinking that we are the only way, the new way, the best way, when in fact there are some lessons to be learned. I think this gallery model, Chris kind of joked about curation with Super Rare, for example, but I think there are some interesting platforms coming along. Maker's Place has kind of taken this approach to really taking a curated list of artists that they have already. They're not really taking new ones, for example, and looking to develop them it looks like more of a career basis. Hopefully that's a long-term goal and vision that they have, but I think NINFA would probably fall into that as well. So I'm seeing some encouraging signs where the market's maturing in that sense. And I think also just valuing this art outside of monetary ways is interesting to think about too. Just the relationships, the IRL opportunities that we get, the ways that we can support each other, artists buying and collecting from each other. These are really unique to Web3. So I find that fascinating. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next spicy conversation next week. So this has been a great chat. And of course, we'll be back with everybody next week at 1 p.m. on Wednesday as usual. Vasia is going to find us a great tweet to provoke more good conversation. So looking forward to connecting with everybody then.
Thanks for tuning into Moments the Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and follow us to keep up with all the latest trending Web3 topics. Join us every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern on X for our live space and be a part of the dialogue.